Imagine waking up in ancient Greece nearly 2,500 years ago. The first rays of sunlight are beginning to appear over the distant hills surrounding Athens. The city is still quiet, but not for long. There are no alarm clocks, no electric lights, and no modern conveniences waiting for you. Instead, your day begins with the rhythm of nature itself. As the darkness slowly fades, the sounds of the city begin to emerge. Roosters crow from nearby courtyards. Dogs bark in the distance. Merchants prepare their carts, and farmers start their journey toward the marketplace. The smell of wood smoke rises into the cool morning air as families begin preparing their first meal of the day. This is ancient Greece, one of the most influential civilizations in human history. When most people think about ancient Greece, they imagine philosophers discussing ideas beneath marble columns, warriors fighting heroic battles, and magnificent temples dedicated to powerful gods. But for the vast majority of people, daily life looked very different. Most Greeks were not philosophers or famous generals. They were farmers, craftsmen, merchants, fishermen, and laborers. They spent their days working hard to support their families and survive in a world that could be both beautiful and unforgiving. To truly understand ancient Greece, we must step away from the famous monuments and explore the lives of ordinary people. Let's begin with the home. Contrary to what many people imagine, most ancient Greek houses were surprisingly simple. While public buildings and temples were often built from impressive stone and marble, ordinary homes were usually constructed using mud bricks, wood, and local stone. From the outside, many houses appeared plain and unremarkable. Privacy was highly valued, so homes often faced inward toward a central courtyard rather than outward toward the street. This courtyard served as the heart of family life. Children played there, meals were prepared there, and much of daily activity took place within its walls. Inside, the rooms were small and functional. Furniture was limited. Most families owned only what they truly needed. Wooden stools, simple tables, storage jars, and woven beds were common. Wealthier families could afford more decorative furnishings, but luxury was rare compared to modern standards. Water had to be collected manually. There were no faucets or running water in most homes. Family members often carried water from public fountains or wells, a task that required time and effort every single day. Life was far from comfortable. During the summer, the Mediterranean heat could become intense. During winter, homes offered limited protection from the cold. There was no central heating, no air conditioning, and no insulation as we know it today. Yet despite these challenges, Greek families built strong communities and maintained rich social lives. Family stood at the center of society. The household was considered the foundation of the Greek world. Every member had responsibilities, and everyone was expected to contribute. The father usually served as the head of the household. He made important decisions, managed property, and represented the family in public affairs. Women oversaw domestic life, supervised servants if the family could afford them, and managed many of the daily operations within the home. Children were expected to learn their future roles from an early age. Boys often accompanied their fathers and learned practical skills, while girls learned household management from their mothers. Education varied depending on wealth and location. In cities like Athens, some boys received formal instruction in reading, writing, mathematics, music, and physical training. Education was considered an important part of becoming a responsible citizen. Girls, however, generally received less formal education. Their training focused more heavily on domestic responsibilities, although this varied from region to region. One place where Greek life differed dramatically was Sparta. While Athens emphasized philosophy, democracy, and education, Sparta focused almost entirely on military discipline. Spartan boys began military training at a very young age. Their lives were shaped by endurance, physical strength, and loyalty to the state. Even Spartan girls received physical training, something that was unusual in much of the ancient world. The contrast between Athens and Sparta reveals an important truth about ancient Greece. It was never a single unified nation. Instead, Greece consisted of hundreds of independent city-states, each with its own laws, customs, and traditions. Athens was different from Sparta. Sparta was different from Corinth. Corinth was different from Thebes. Although they shared language, religion, and many cultural traditions, each city-state developed its own unique identity. As the morning continues, the streets become increasingly crowded. Citizens make their way toward the agora, the central marketplace and social hub of the city. The agora was much more than a place to buy and sell goods. It was where people gathered to exchange news, discuss politics, conduct business, and socialize. Imagine walking through the marketplace. Merchants call out their prices. Farmers display baskets filled with olives, figs, onions, and fresh vegetables. Potters arrange their latest creations. Blacksmiths hammer metal into tools and weapons. The air is filled with conversation, bargaining, and movement. For many Greeks, the marketplace represented the center of public life. Here, ideas could spread quickly. News from distant lands arrived through traveling merchants and sailors. Political debates unfolded in public view. Philosophers occasionally attracted crowds eager to hear new ideas about life, morality, and the universe. Few civilizations placed as much value on discussion and debate as the Greeks. The ability to speak persuasively was highly respected, especially in democratic Athens, where citizens participated directly in political decision-making. Of course, not everyone enjoyed the same rights. Women, slaves, and foreigners were generally excluded from political participation. The democracy of Athens was revolutionary for its time, but it was far from universal. Even so, the Greek experiment with citizenship and public debate would influence governments for thousands of years to come. As midday approaches, the city grows warmer. Shadows shorten, work continues. And for the people of ancient Greece, the most important part of the day is still ahead, because survival in this world depended not only on politics and philosophy, but on something much more basic: food. And obtaining it was a daily challenge faced by nearly every family. Food shaped nearly every aspect of life in ancient Greece, long before supermarkets, refrigeration, or global trade networks. Obtaining enough food required constant effort. Every meal depended on the changing seasons, local harvests, and the hard work of countless farmers, fishermen, shepherds, and merchants. For the average Greek family, food was simple. Breakfast was often modest. Many people began their day with bread dipped in wine or olive oil. Some ate figs, olives, or small portions of cheese. Wealthy citizens enjoyed greater variety, but most people focused on practicality rather than luxury. Bread was the foundation of the Greek diet. Almost every household depended on it. Women often spent hours grinding grain into flour, using heavy stone mills. This labor-intensive process was repeated day after day, year after year. Once the flour was prepared, it could be baked into various forms of bread that would sustain the family throughout the day. Olive oil was equally important. The olive tree was one of the most valuable resources in Greece. Its fruit provided food, its oil was used in cooking, and it even served as fuel for lamps that illuminated homes after sunset. Entire regions became prosperous through olive cultivation. Many Greek farmers spent their lives tending olive groves that had been passed down through generations. Wine also played a central role in daily life. Unlike modern wine, Greek wine was usually mixed with water before drinking. Consuming unmixed wine was often considered uncivilized and excessive. Wine accompanied meals, religious ceremonies, social gatherings, and celebrations. Clean drinking water was not always reliable, making diluted wine a safer alternative in many situations. Fish was another essential food source. With the Mediterranean Sea surrounding much of Greece, fishing supported countless communities. Fresh fish, dried fish, and salted fish were common foods throughout the Greek world. For people living near the coast, seafood was often easier to obtain than meat. Meat itself was relatively rare for ordinary families. Many people ate meat only during religious festivals or special occasions. Animals were valuable assets, providing labor, milk, wool, and other resources. Slaughtering one was not a decision taken lightly. This meant that many Greeks relied heavily on vegetables, legumes, fruits, and grains. Lentils, chickpeas, onions, garlic, cabbage, figs, grapes, and herbs appeared regularly on dining tables. Although the diet was simple, modern nutrition experts often note that it was surprisingly healthy. Much of what we now call the Mediterranean diet has its roots in ancient Greece, yet obtaining this food required enormous effort. Nearly 80% of the population worked in agriculture in some form. The Greek landscape was beautiful, but it presented many challenges. Mountain ranges covered much of the territory, limiting the amount of fertile farmland available. Farmers had to adapt to rocky soil, unpredictable weather, and limited water supplies. Every successful harvest depended upon experience, patience, and a little luck. A poor growing season could create serious hardships. Droughts, storms, crop diseases, or conflicts between city-states could threaten entire communities. Food security was never guaranteed. This uncertainty shaped the Greek mindset. People understood that prosperity could disappear quickly. Hard work was respected because survival often depended on it. As the afternoon sun shines brightly over the countryside, farmers continue their labor. Some tend vineyards, others care for sheep and goats grazing across the hills. Many work fields growing barley and wheat. These agricultural activities form the backbone of the Greek economy. But farming was only one part of a much larger world. Ancient Greece was also a civilization of traders, sailors, and craftsmen. The sea connected Greek communities in ways that mountains never could. Hundreds of islands dotted the Aegean Sea. Merchant ships traveled constantly between ports carrying goods, ideas, and news. Greek traders established connections throughout the Mediterranean. They exchanged olive oil, pottery, wine, and metalwork for grain, timber, luxury goods, and resources unavailable at home. For many Greeks, the sea represented opportunity. Young men joined trading voyages, hoping to improve their fortunes. Experienced sailors became valuable members of society. Ports buzzed with activity as ships arrived from distant lands. Imagine standing on a busy harbor in Athens. The smell of salt water fills the air. Workers unload cargo. Merchants negotiate prices. Foreign languages can be heard among the crowd. Every arriving ship brings stories from distant regions: Egypt, Phoenicia, Sicily, the Black Sea. The Greek world was connected to an international network long before modern globalization existed. These connections helped spread not only goods, but also knowledge. Ideas traveled alongside merchants. New technologies, artistic influences, and cultural practices crossed the Mediterranean through trade. Meanwhile, within the cities themselves, skilled craftsmen worked tirelessly. Potters created beautiful vessels decorated with scenes from mythology and daily life. Bronze workers forged tools, armor, and weapons. Stone masons shaped marble into statues and buildings that would survive for thousands of years. Carpenters, leatherworkers, jewelers, and textile producers all contributed to the economy. Many workshops were family businesses, skills passed from one generation to the next. A child might spend years learning the trade of a parent before eventually taking over the workshop. This combination of agriculture, trade, and craftsmanship helped transform Greece into one of the most influential civilizations of the ancient world. Yet beneath this prosperity existed a difficult reality. Much of the labor that sustained Greek society was performed by slaves. Slavery was deeply woven into daily life. Some slaves worked in households, others labored in mines, farms, workshops, and public projects. Their experiences varied dramatically, but their freedom was absent. For many citizens, slavery was viewed as a normal part of society. Today, this reality reminds us that even the civilizations responsible for remarkable achievements often contained profound inequalities. As the afternoon slowly begins to fade, families prepare for the evening. Work starts to wind down. The intense heat becomes more manageable. People return home carrying goods purchased at the marketplace. Children finish their daily activities. Cooking fires are lit. And across Greece, another important aspect of life begins to take center stage. Family, religion, and the powerful gods who watched over every moment of human existence. As evening approaches and the golden light of the Mediterranean sun begins to soften, families gather once again within their homes and courtyards. For the people of ancient Greece, daily life was shaped not only by work and family, but also by a powerful belief that gods were present everywhere. The gods watched over the cities. They influenced the weather. They protected sailors at sea. They blessed harvests. And when angered, they could bring disaster. Religion was not something practiced only occasionally. It was woven into every aspect of life. A farmer planting crops might offer a prayer to Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. A sailor preparing for a voyage would seek the protection of Poseidon. A young woman about to marry might make offerings to Hera. Every important moment of life was connected to divine forces. The Greek world was filled with temples, shrines, statues, and sacred spaces dedicated to different gods and goddesses. Towering above Athens stood the Acropolis, crowned by the magnificent Parthenon. Even today, its ruins inspire awe. But imagine seeing it in its prime, its marble shining brilliantly beneath the sunlight, its colors vibrant and alive, its statues freshly carved. For ancient Athenians, it was not merely a monument. It was a sacred place that symbolized the power and protection of Athena, the city's patron goddess. Religious festivals were among the most important events of the year. Entire cities would celebrate together. Music filled the streets. Processions wound through public spaces. Athletic competitions attracted participants from across Greece. Sacrifices were performed to honor the gods. For many people, these festivals provided moments of joy, community, and spiritual connection. The most famous of these celebrations eventually gave birth to something that still exists today, the Olympic Games. Held in Olympia every 4 years, the Games brought together athletes from across the Greek world. For the duration of the competition, many conflicts between city-states were temporarily suspended. Competitors tested their strength, speed, and endurance before enormous crowds. Victory brought prestige not only to the athlete, but also to their city. In a world often divided by rivalry and warfare, the Games created a rare sense of shared identity. Yet while public religion united communities, family remained the center of private life. The Greek household was a carefully organized structure. Every member had duties, every role carried expectations. Marriage was considered one of the most important milestones in life. Most marriages were arranged by families rather than chosen through romance. Practical considerations often mattered more than personal feelings. Families sought stability, social connections, and economic security. Women typically married in their teenage years. Men often married later after establishing themselves economically. Once married, a woman became responsible for managing many aspects of household life. She supervised food preparation. She organized domestic tasks. She cared for children. And in wealthier homes, she managed servants and slaves. Although women held significant responsibilities within the household, their public roles were generally limited compared to those of men. Athens, in particular, maintained strict expectations regarding women's participation in public life. Sparta, however, presented a very different picture. Spartan women enjoyed greater freedom than many of their counterparts elsewhere in Greece. They received physical training, they could own property, and they often exercised more influence within society. These differences once again highlight how diverse the Greek world truly was. There was no single Greek way of life. Customs varied dramatically from one city-state to another. Children occupied a special place within Greek society. Parents viewed them as the future of the family and the city. From an early age, children learned through observation and participation. They watched adults work. They practiced household skills. They listened to stories about heroes, gods, and historical events. Education was highly valued, especially in Athens. Boys from wealthier families attended schools where they learned reading, writing, mathematics, music, poetry, and public speaking. Physical training also played an important role. The Greeks admired balance. They believed a person should develop both mind and body. This ideal became known as the pursuit of excellence, a concept that influenced Greek culture for centuries. Students memorized the works of Homer. They studied rhetoric. They learned how to participate in public life. For many Athenians, education was not simply preparation for employment. It was preparation for citizenship. Philosophy also flourished in this environment. As evening conversations unfolded in public spaces and private gatherings, ideas were debated with remarkable enthusiasm. Questions that still fascinate humanity today were explored. What is justice? What makes a good life? How should society be governed? What is truth? Great thinkers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle would eventually shape the intellectual foundations of Western civilization. Yet many of their discussions took place in surprisingly ordinary settings: marketplaces, courtyards, gymnasiums, public squares. Their ideas emerged from the daily life of the city. As darkness slowly settles over Athens, oil lamps begin to glow inside homes. Families gather for the evening meal. The day's labor is finished. Stories are shared. Children listen carefully. Outside, the stars appear overhead. And in a world without electric light, the night sky shines with a brilliance that few modern people ever experience. But despite the beauty of the evening, life in ancient Greece was not always peaceful. Beyond the city walls, dangers remained. Wars erupted frequently. Disease could spread without warning. Natural disasters threatened communities. And survival often depended upon courage, resilience, and luck. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the harsher realities of life in ancient Greece, the soldiers who defended their cities, the conflicts that shaped history, the illnesses that medicine could not cure, and the challenges that every family faced in a world far less predictable than our own. As night falls across ancient Greece, the streets begin to quiet. Oil lamps flicker softly behind wooden doors. Families gather for one final meal before sleep. The sounds of the marketplace fade into the distance, replaced by the occasional bark of a dog or the footsteps of a late traveler making his way home. But beneath the calm surface of daily life, danger was never far away. For the people of ancient Greece, uncertainty was a constant companion. Wars erupted frequently between rival city-states. Pirates threatened coastal communities. Disease could spread without warning, and even a simple injury could become life-threatening. Unlike the modern world, there were no hospitals, antibiotics, or emergency services. A broken bone, an infected wound, or a serious illness could dramatically alter the course of a person's life. Greek medicine was far more advanced than many ancient societies, yet it remained limited by the knowledge of the time. One of the most famous figures in medical history emerged from ancient Greece, Hippocrates. Often called the father of medicine, Hippocrates encouraged physicians to observe patients carefully and search for natural explanations for disease rather than attributing everything to divine punishment. His ideas would influence medicine for centuries, yet even the best physicians could do little against many illnesses. Epidemics occasionally swept through cities. Perhaps the most famous occurred during the Peloponnesian War. In 430 BC, a devastating plague struck Athens. The disease spread rapidly through the crowded city. Thousands died. Families were torn apart. The social fabric of the city was shaken. Even powerful leaders were not spared. The experience reminded everyone how fragile life could be. And disease was only one threat. Conflict was an almost unavoidable reality. The Greek world was deeply competitive. City-states fought over territory, resources, influence, and political power. Young men often expected that military service would become part of their lives. For many Greeks, warfare was not a distant event. It was a personal responsibility. Imagine a young Athenian citizen preparing for military service. His armor is heavy, his shield is large and round, his spear is nearly as tall as he is. Standing shoulder to shoulder with fellow soldiers, he becomes part of the phalanx. The phalanx was one of the most effective military formations of the ancient world. Rows of soldiers advanced together in disciplined formation. Each man's shield helped protect the person beside him. Success depended upon unity. Courage mattered, but discipline mattered even more. Few sights were more intimidating than two phalanxes moving toward one another across an open battlefield. For Spartans, military life was even more demanding. From childhood, Spartan boys underwent rigorous training designed to prepare them for war, endurance, discipline, loyalty. These values defined Spartan society. The reputation of Spartan warriors spread throughout the ancient world. Even today, their stories continue to capture the imagination. Yet, despite the glory often associated with ancient battles, war brought suffering. Cities were destroyed, families were separated, fields were burned, lives were lost. The victories celebrated in history books often came at tremendous human cost. For ordinary people, peace was always preferable. Most Greeks spent their lives trying to support their families rather than seeking military glory. As years passed, individuals experienced another reality that touched every household: aging. Life expectancy in ancient Greece was significantly lower than it is today. Infant mortality was high. Many children never reached adulthood. Those who survived often faced a lifetime of physical labor. By modern standards, daily life was demanding, yet people still found joy. They celebrated weddings. They attended festivals. They laughed with friends. They watched athletic competitions. They listened to music and poetry. Human nature has changed far less than we sometimes imagine. The hopes, fears, ambitions, and emotions of ancient Greeks were remarkably similar to our own. Eventually, every life reached its end. Death was a familiar presence in the ancient world. Greek funerary customs reflected a deep respect for the deceased. Families carefully prepared the body. Relatives gathered to mourn. Ceremonies honored both the individual and the gods. Many Greeks believed that after death, souls traveled to the underworld. This mysterious realm was ruled by Hades. Stories described rivers separating the world of the living from the world of the dead. Some souls enjoyed peaceful existence. Others faced punishment. These beliefs varied over time, but they offered comfort in a world filled with uncertainty. As generations passed, countless lives unfolded across the Greek world. Most of those individuals would never become famous. Their names have been lost to history. Their homes have disappeared. Their possessions have returned to dust. And yet their collective efforts helped create one of humanity's most influential civilizations. The legacy of ancient Greece extends far beyond its temples and monuments. Its ideas transformed the world. Greek philosophy shaped how we think. Greek democracy influenced modern governments. Greek mathematics, science, literature, and art laid foundations that still support modern civilization. Even many of the words we use today trace their origins back to ancient Greece. The people who walked the streets of Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes could never have imagined how far their influence would travel. Thousands of years later, we still study their achievements. We still admire their creativity. We still debate their ideas. And we still tell their stories. As our journey through ancient Greece comes to an end, imagine the city once more. The marketplace is quiet. The workshops have closed. Families rest behind simple walls of stone and clay. Above them, the stars shine across the Mediterranean sky, just as they did more than 2,000 years ago. Tomorrow the city will awaken again. Farmers will return to their fields. Merchants will open their stalls. Children will learn from their parents. Sailors will set course for distant shores. And life will continue much as it has for generations. Ancient Greece was not merely a land of heroes, philosophers, and legendary battles. It was a world filled with ordinary people living extraordinary lives. People who worked, struggled, hoped, dreamed, loved, and endured. People not so different from ourselves, and perhaps that is why their story continues to fascinate us, because when we look closely enough at the ancient world, we discover something unexpected. we discover ourselves. Thank you for joining us tonight on History After Dark. And until our next journey through the past, rest well.